My name is Maya Marshall. I'm 34 years old, and until a few days ago, I thought I was getting married. If you had walked into our apartment last Tuesday, you would have thought we were the perfect couple. The table was covered with tiny squares of wedding cake samples, vanilla bean, pistachio, salted caramel. Jason was leaning against the counter, grinning at me like he always did when he thought I was being too serious. I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt, how safe. But peace has a sound, and that night it shattered with a laugh. Jason had just taken a bite of buttercream when I said it. "Hey, my lawyer brought something up that we should probably discuss. A prenup." He froze the spoon halfway to his mouth. Then he laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not even a surprised one. It was loud, condescending, like I just told him I planned to ensure our love. "Maya, seriously," he said, still laughing. "We're not billionaires. You think I'm after your company or something? That's ridiculous." His tone was light, but underneath it there was something sharp, like mockery wrapped in silk. I tried to smile. "It's not about that. You know I started my firm from scratch. It's standard practice to protect what was built before marriage. Everything after ours together, 50-50. That's fair." Jason leaned back against the counter, arms crossed. "It's not fair, Maya. It's insulting. It's like you're planning for the divorce before the wedding." "I'm planning for reality," I said quietly. "My partners, my employees, this company isn't just mine anymore. A messy split could destroy it." He gave me a long look. Calm. Superior. "You sound like your lawyer. I thought we were building a life, not drafting a contract." I didn't answer, because in that moment I realized something. He wasn't really angry about the paper. He was angry that I had something to protect. When I met Jason 4 years ago, he was charming and ambitious, still figuring out his career in marketing. I never cared that I earned more. I admired his creativity, his easy confidence. He'd tell me, "You're the smartest woman I know," and I believed him. But as my company grew, that compliment started to sound less like admiration and more like resentment disguised as praise. Little jokes about how I was the boss even at home. Subtle digs when I worked late. I ignored them, telling myself that love required patience. That night, though, his laughter stripped away every illusion. It wasn't a discussion anymore. It was a dismissal. "Jason," I said finally, "the prenup isn't romantic, I know, but it's reasonable." He shook his head, pushing the cake box away. "No, Maya, it's tacky. End of discussion." That phrase, "end of discussion," echoed in my head like a slammed door. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said softly. "I respect your decision." He smiled, thinking he'd won. But in that instant, something inside me went silent. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. The next morning, he kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work. I smiled back, pretending. As soon as the door closed, I opened my laptop. The first email I sent was to the wedding venue, then the caterer, then the florist. Each cancellation was cold, methodical. "Dear vendor, please confirm cancellation per contract clause. The deposits, $15,000 for the venue, $8,000 for the caterer, $4,000 for the florist, gone in minutes. $27,000 erased with a calm I couldn't explain. By noon, the inbox filled with confirmation emails. Your cancellation is confirmed. Each one felt like another heartbeat slowing down. That night, Jason came home cheerful, talking about tie colors and playlists. He poured us wine, asked about my day. I told him it was fine. I even smiled. The performance was effortless. He didn't notice that the wedding folder on my laptop was gone, or that I'd deleted the shared calendar invite titled Our Big Day. He had no idea that in 48 hours his phone would ring and his perfect little world would crack open. As I watched him that night laughing about a friend's bachelor party, something unexpected washed over me. Not guilt, not sadness, just peace. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't doubting myself. I wasn't explaining, defending, hoping he'd understand. I was done. I respected his decision. And mine was simple. If he couldn't respect my boundaries, he didn't deserve my future. And as I set down my wine glass, I caught our reflection in the dark window. He was still smiling. I was already gone. The morning after I canceled everything, the world felt unnaturally still. Jason was humming in the shower, completely unaware that his wedding, our wedding, no longer existed. I made coffee, watched the steam rise, and thought about how strangely easy it had been. You'd expect heartbreak to feel heavy, but clarity has a strange lightness to it. As I stirred my cup, I glanced at my laptop screen. My inbox was filled with confirmation emails. Your reservation has been canceled. Refunds are non-refundable as per policy. We wish you the best moving forward. $27,000 gone. Just like that. But I didn't flinch. Money was replaceable. Dignity wasn't. That day at work, I buried myself in data projections and investor calls. My two co-founders, Olivia and Hannah, didn't notice the tension beneath my calm. They knew me well enough to sense something was wrong, but they also knew I didn't talk about my private life. During our lunch break, Hannah asked casually, "So how's wedding prep? You seem quiet lately." I looked up from my laptop. "I think the wedding's over." Her fork froze midair. "What do you mean over?" I smiled faintly. He laughed at a prenup. There was a silence. Then Olivia let out a low whistle. Wow. The classic, "I love you, but not enough to respect your life's work" moment. "Something like that," I murmured. I didn't elaborate. I didn't tell them how his laugh had felt like someone erasing me from my own story. That night, Jason cooked dinner, his version of an apology for being short during the cake tasting. Except he wasn't apologizing for what mattered. He had no idea what he'd done wrong. "Babe," he said, sliding a plate in front of me. I was thinking maybe we should honeymoon in Santorini instead. My mom said she could help us upgrade the hotel. His mom, of course. Beatrice always had an opinion about our life. I smiled mechanically. That's sweet of her. Jason poured wine. "Oh, by the way, the florist's supposed to call you tomorrow about the centerpiece samples. I told her to check in with you directly." I froze for half a second. That was the moment I'd been waiting for, the tiny domino that would trigger everything. I met his eyes, smiled faintly. "Sure, I'll answer if she calls." The next afternoon, I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed repeatedly. Jason 12 missed calls. 1. New message, "Maya, the venue called me. They said you canceled. What the hell is going on?" By the time I called him back, he was already shouting, "Maya, this is some sick joke, right? They said you canceled everything. The venue, the caterer, everything." I let him rage for a moment, his words tumbling over each other. When he finally stopped for breath, I spoke quietly. "There's no wedding, Jason." Silence. Then, "What do you mean there's no wedding? You made your decision," I said evenly. "You said you wouldn't sign a prenup. I respect that. But I won't get married without one. So no wedding." It was the calmest thing I'd ever said. There was a long pause. I could hear his breath shake through the phone. Then his voice came back trembling with fury. "You canceled our wedding because of a stupid piece of paper without even talking to me." "Jason, we did talk. You said end of discussion. I simply agreed." He didn't respond. For 10 seconds, I heard nothing. Then the call ended. An hour later, my phone lit up again. But this time it wasn't Jason. "Unknown number," I answered and instantly regretted it. "Maya," a sharp female voice snapped. "This is Beatrice, Jason's mother. I don't know what kind of tantrum you're throwing, but you are going to call that venue back and fix this right now." I took a slow breath. "Mrs. Collins, with respect, this is between me and Jason." "Oh no, sweetheart, it's not. You've humiliated my son. Our family has guests flying in, deposits paid. How dare you pull something like this? You think you can embarrass us and walk away." Her tone was a mix of outrage and entitlement that made my stomach turn. "With all due respect," I said evenly, "the deposits are gone. The wedding is off." Beatrice scoffed. "You've already spent the money. Just reinstate the bookings and stop acting like a child." A child. That's what they always called women who refused to obey. "Good night, Mrs. Collins," I said softly and hung up. That night, Jason came home late. He didn't look at me when he entered. His face was red, his jaw tight. "You couldn't even wait to talk to me. You had to make me look like a fool," he said quietly. "I didn't make you look like anything," I said. "You did that when you laughed at me." He turned away, shaking his head. "You've lost it." Maybe I had, but it was a loss that felt a lot like freedom. For the next few days, we coexisted like polite strangers. He moved into the guest room. We passed each other in the hallway, exchanging brief nods, both pretending not to feel the tension humming in the walls. And then on the 5th morning, he said something that made my blood run cold. "You know," he said casually, leaning in the kitchen doorway, "my mom thinks you owe us. For the embarrassment. For all the money we put in." He smiled faintly. "She's drawing up a list." A list. I should have laughed. But I didn't. Because I'd seen enough of Beatrice Collins to know she wasn't bluffing. Something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The list arrived 2 days later. A polite little email titled "Reimbursement Request" sent from Beatrice's personal address but written in Jason's formal tone. It began with a single line that made me smirk despite myself. "We've itemized the expenses incurred due to your unilateral decision to cancel the wedding." Attached was a spreadsheet so detailed it could have passed for a corporate audit if it weren't dripping with arrogance. $9, $500, custom wedding suit and tailoring. $4,000 rehearsal dinner hosting fees. $2,000 $800 family travel coordination, $3,500 non-refundable honeymoon bookings, $5,000 planning and administrative services provided by Beatrice Collins. At the bottom, bolded and centered, total $24, $800. I actually laughed, out loud, alone in my office. It wasn't the number that shocked me, it was the audacity. They'd charged me for Beatrice's own time like she was a wedding consultant. That night, Jason stood in the doorway to my study, arms crossed. You saw Mom's email. I did, I said without looking up. Quite the invoice. It's fair, he said defensively. She put in months of work, and you canceled everything. People deserve compensation. Compensation, I repeated softly, for planning her son's wedding. Jason frowned. Don't twist this, Maya. You blindsided everyone. You embarrassed my family. I looked up then, meeting his eyes. Your family embarrassed themselves when they started treating this wedding like a business transaction. His jaw tightened. You think you're so cold, so logical. You can't just make decisions like this without consequences. Oh, I'm aware of the consequences, I said quietly. That's why I'm documenting every word. He blinked. What? Emails calls your mother's invoice, I said, sliding my laptop closed. It's all archived. My lawyer's already reviewing it. Jason's face flushed. You're unbelievable. I stood moving past him. No, I'm just done being played. The following morning, I sent my reply. Calm, surgical. Subject reimbursement request. Jason, I will not be paying for inflated or fabricated costs, family travel, or services rendered by relatives. However, I am willing to reimburse the verifiable cost of the non-refundable wedding suit and tailoring, provided you submit the original receipts. Upon reimbursement, the suit will be turned over to me as property. As for the apartment, the 60-day notice still stands. Please vacate by the agreed date. Maya. It was short, decisive, and legally airtight. I knew what it would do to him. Jason wasn't used to limits. He'd been raised in a family where tantrums worked, and logic was an insult. I'd just shown him neither would move me. By that evening, the retaliation began. The texts started coming in from mutual friends, soft probes disguised as concern. Hey, Maya, I heard you called off the wedding without warning. That true? Jason says you're trying to keep all the deposits to yourself. The smear campaign was on schedule. At first, I ignored them. Then I realized something important. I didn't have to defend myself. The truth had its own gravity. It just needed time to pull everything back into orbit. So I answered each message the same way. We disagreed on a fundamental issue of trust. I wish him the best. Nothing more, nothing less. Every word carefully chosen to sound calm so that their chaos would echo louder in comparison. But Beatrice wasn't done. 3 days later, I came home to find a stranger standing in the hallway. A woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and the same smug expression as Jason. Can I help you? I asked, setting down my keys. I'm Danielle, she said flatly. Jason's sister. Of course. She stepped closer, her perfume thick and expensive. You think you can just throw him out? Humiliate our family? You owe him. I don't owe him anything, I said evenly. Danielle laughed. You know what my dad said? He said this was a mistake, thinking someone like you could ever be family. Her words hit with more precision than volume. Someone like me, the outsider, the one who didn't come from money or legacy or polished dinner parties. I tilted my head. Tell your dad I appreciate the honesty. She blinked, momentarily thrown off. You're really proud of yourself, huh? No, I said quietly. I'm just proud that I finally stopped pretending. Danielle gave a cold smile. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you've started. And then she left, heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving behind a scent of warning and desperation. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because something clicked into place. Danielle's mention of her father wasn't random. It was deliberate. And suddenly I remembered a few odd conversations from months ago. Raymond Collins asking about my company's logistics, Jason mentioning how his dad's business was struggling to modernize. They hadn't wanted a daughter-in-law. They'd wanted a bridge. A merger. Love was never their investment, it was leverage. And now that the deal had fallen apart, they were coming for a refund. But they were about to learn that I never lose track of numbers. Or debts. By the next week, the Collins family's campaign against me evolved from whispers to warfare. Their strategy was simple. Drown me in drama, make me react, and then use my reaction as proof that I was unstable. Unfortunately for them, I'm not the kind of woman who panics. I document. Every morning, I woke to a fresh batch of messages, mutual friends checking in colleagues who'd heard rumors. The story being told was beautifully twisted. Maya Marshall, the control freak entrepreneur who canceled her wedding because she couldn't share her money. At first, I ignored it, but by the fourth day, the noise became impossible to avoid. Even my business partner, Hannah, pulled me aside after a meeting. "Okay," she said gently. "What's going on?" Jason's mother called our office pretending to be a potential client. She asked if you were mentally stable. I froze. "She did what?" Hannah gave me an apologetic look. "Don't worry," I shut her down. "But Maya, this is getting personal. You need to protect yourself." I nodded slowly. "I already am." That afternoon, I drafted a single devastating reply to the entire situation. No emotion, just precision. Subject reimbursement request. Follow-up. Jason, as no receipts have been provided for the claimed $24,800, my offer to reimburse verifiable costs is withdrawn. All further communication regarding finances or housing will be through my lawyer. Maya. I reread it 3 times before hitting send. It wasn't revenge, it was boundaries. Legal, clean, and irreversible. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. That evening, I returned home to find Jason waiting in the kitchen. He was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. On the table lay a stack of papers. Receipts, notes, screenshots, an itemized report of every supposed expense I owed him. "I had my mom help me organize this," he said, his voice almost polite, "so you can't say I didn't provide proof." I skimmed the papers. Most were genuine receipts, but not for anything remotely wedding-related. Gym memberships, clothing stores, a new iPhone, even a set of golf clubs. "This," I said, holding up the first page, "is a bill for your personal trainer." He didn't flinch. Yeah, I was getting in shape for the wedding. I looked at him in disbelief. "Jason, this is fraud." He smiled faintly. "It's fairness." Something in his voice, the quiet conviction of entitlement, made my stomach turn. That night I sat in bed rereading his evidence. The deeper I went, the clearer it became. This wasn't about money. It was about control. Jason and his family had built their entire identity around the idea that they could make people yield, and when I refused, they needed to punish me for it. But the thing about people who rely on manipulation, they mistake silence for weakness. So I decided to let them speak first, and louder. Over the next week, the Collins family's behavior became theatrical. Jason's father, Raymond, started calling mutual acquaintances, hinting that I'd ruined his son's mental health. Beatrice began posting cryptic quotes online about ungrateful women and men who love too much. And Jason himself, he sent me one last text. "You're not just burning a bridge, Maya. You're isolating yourself. People see what you really are now." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, "Good, let them see," and hit send. 3 days later, a black SUV pulled up outside my apartment. For a moment, I thought Jason was back for another confrontation. But when the door opened, it wasn't him. It was Raymond Collins, flanked by that same sister, Danielle. Raymond was taller than I remembered, his smile perfectly rehearsed. "Maya," he said warmly, "we should talk." I crossed my arms. "About what?" "The fake invoices. The gossip." He chuckled softly. "Let's not be childish. We're adults. Things got heated. I just want to clear the air." His voice was smooth, practiced the same tone I'd heard from investors who tried to sweet-talk their way into equity. "Sure," I said finally. "Let's talk. Over lunch. My treat." He seemed pleased, as if I'd taken the bait, but I wasn't meeting him to reconcile. I was meeting him to confirm what I already suspected. That this wasn't heartbreak. It was business, and they'd been planning it all along. The restaurant Raymond chose was quiet, high-end, the kind of place where business deals hide behind polite laughter. He arrived early, of course. Men like him always did. Control was their comfort food. "Maya," he said warmly, standing as I approached. "You look radiant." "Thank you," I said, matching his civility with an equally practiced smile. "You look determined." He laughed, that deep, confident laugh of a man who'd spent his life mistaking arrogance for charm. "I wanted to talk in person. This whole situation with Jason has gotten out of hand. Too emotional. You know how young people can be." I raised an eyebrow. "Your son is 30. He paused for a fraction of a second before recovering. "Still, this doesn't have to end like this. We're all reasonable people." "Reasonable," I repeated, letting the word linger. "That's an interesting choice." He started talking then, smooth, effortless, every word, dripping with rehearsed warmth. He didn't mention Jason or the canceled wedding once. Instead, he drifted into stories about his company, a small manufacturing business that had hit a few rough patches. "The market's unpredictable these days," he said. "Supply chain issues, rising costs. It's hard to adapt. What we need are fresh minds, people like you. Innovative thinkers who can help reposition a legacy brand. I listened quietly, stirring my tea. There it was, the real conversation. Not about love, about leverage. Raymond, I said gently, are you trying to hire me or manipulate me? His eyes flickered just slightly. Come now, Maya. Don't be cynical. I'm talking about family helping family. You were almost part of ours. I smiled faintly. Almost. For a moment, silence hung between us, polished and poisonous. Then he leaned forward, voice softening. Look, I'll be honest. When Jason met you, I was thrilled. You're intelligent, accomplished. But lately, this whole prenup obsession, it's made people think you're not as stable as we thought. I stared at him. You mean it made people realize they couldn't control me? He tried to laugh it off. You're misinterpreting my intent. No, I said, my voice flat now. I'm seeing it clearly for the first time. He sat back, eyes narrowing. The mask was slipping. You don't understand how things work, Maya, he said. Reputation matters. Jason's future, my business, it's all connected. Right now, people are talking. They're wondering if you'll go around canceling things whenever life doesn't go your way. It was a threat dressed as advice. And that's when I decided to stop being polite. Tell me something, Raymond, I said softly. When you told Jason to propose, was it before or after you realized my company's valuation crossed 8 figures? The color drained from his face. That's absurd. Because here's the thing. I continued. He wasn't exactly subtle. The timing, the sudden pressure to combine finances, your wife asking about my investor network. It was all a little too coordinated. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. You didn't want a daughter-in-law. You wanted a business partner you could control. For a long, brittle moment, Raymond just stared at me. The charm had evaporated. The mask cracked completely. Then his expression hardened. You've got a dangerous imagination. No, I said, rising from my seat. I just finally stopped ignoring the math. He stood too, trying to recover his composure. If you walk away from this like a victim, Maya people will believe whatever story they hear first. And you know how narratives work. I picked up my purse, calm and deliberate. You're right. And I have all the receipts, emails, texts, invoices. So when your story falls apart, I'll just let the facts tell mine. His jaw clenched. You think you're untouchable? No, I said, just unreachable. And then I left. I didn't look back, but I could feel his eyes on me until I stepped out into the sunlight. Outside, I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. The air felt cleaner, lighter. It wasn't triumph I felt. It was something quieter, like closure that had been waiting for years. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from a mutual friend, Susan. OMG. Just heard Jason had a blowout fight with his dad. Apparently, Raymond tried to guilt him into fixing things with you for the company's sake. Jason called him a manipulator and stormed out. It's chaos. I stared at the screen, half smiling. So the empire had cracked from within. I hadn't exposed them publicly. I'd simply forced them to face each other. The wedding had died quietly. But the truth, that was loud enough to echo. 2 weeks passed after that confrontation with Raymond Collins, and for the first time in months, my apartment felt like mine again. No more muffled arguments behind the guest room door. No more strangers pretending to negotiate my life. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that hums with relief. Jason hadn't moved out by the original deadline. I'd half expected that. He was the kind of man who assumed consequences were negotiable. So on the 61st day, my lawyer filed the first stage of the eviction process. Jason must have thought I was bluffing until he got the formal notice taped to his bedroom door. That night, I heard him pacing, muttering under his breath, slamming drawers. But when I walked into the living room, he froze, holding the paper like it was a death sentence. You really did it, he whispered. You actually filed for eviction. I met his eyes calmly. You were given 60 days. That was more than fair. He laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable, Maya. You ruined my life, and now you're kicking me out like trash. Your life, I repeated softly. You laughed at me, mocked what I built, and tried to turn it into a transaction. The only thing I ruined was your illusion of control. He stared at me for a long, trembling moment. Then he dropped the paper on the floor and stormed out. That was the last time I saw him for a while. For the next 2 weeks, silence stretched like fog. No calls, no emails, no lawyers. Until one morning an email arrived. The subject line read, "A path forward." It wasn't from Jason, it was from Raymond. Maya, I think emotions have gotten the best of everyone. I'd like to meet again, just lunch my treat. Let's find a sensible solution. RC. I almost laughed. The audacity of men who ruin things then want lunch to fix them. Still, curiosity is a dangerous thing, and mine has always been my flaw, so I agreed. We met at the same restaurant, But this time I chose the seat with the sunlight behind me so he'd have to squint when he looked my way. He opened with pleasantries again, avoiding Jason's name like it was toxic. Instead, he talked about challenges, partnerships, new opportunities. I let him talk for 10 minutes before interrupting. "Raymond," I said, "you're not here about Jason, are you?" He hesitated. "I'm here to—" "You're here because your company is failing," I said flatly, "and you thought you could still salvage some kind of connection through me." His mouth tightened. "That's a very cynical interpretation." "It's the correct one," I replied, "and we're done here." I stood, left a few bills on the table, and walked out. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to win. Just leaving was enough. A week later, I got a message from Susan again. "You won't believe this. Jason's family is falling apart. His dad yelled at him in front of everyone, said the whole fiasco cost him investors. Jason told people his father tried to use him as a pawn to get to you. Total implosion." I didn't reply immediately. I just sat there rereading the message. There it was, the quiet justice I'd been waiting for. Not revenge, not victory, just the inevitable collapse of lies under their own weight. That weekend, a moving truck appeared in front of my building. Jason was standing beside it, expression hollow eyes, bloodshot. He didn't speak as the movers carried out the last of his things. He avoided eye contact until the very end. When everything was done, he paused at the door, still not looking at me. "I hope you and your money are very happy together," he said bitterly. There was no remorse, just venom. I smiled faintly. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jason." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a second, I thought he might say something, an apology, a confession, anything. But he didn't. He just left. The door clicked shut behind him, and the apartment exhaled. I walked through each room slowly, the air cleaner than it had been in months. On the kitchen counter, the last piece of wedding stationery still lay there, a faded invitation proof I'd never approved. "Maya Marshall and Jason Collins joyfully invite you to celebrate their union." I ran my fingers over the words, then tore it in half. There was no joy in that story, but there was freedom in its ending. Later that night, as I stood by the window, city lights flickering below, I thought about the word justice. It isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or closure speeches. It just arrives, quietly, like a balance restored. Jason and his family had lost a wedding, a business connection, and each other. I'd lost $27,000 and a few illusions. But I'd gained something much rarer, peace. And in that silence, I finally understood something my lawyer once told me when I started my company. Protecting what you build doesn't mean you expect failure. It means you've earned the right to survive it. He was right. I had survived it. And as I turned off the lights and let the city hum in the distance, one truth settled deep in